canned, and you can't seem to buy fresh ones anywhere? Well, the reason for that is simple. Fresh olives has such a disgusting taste that no grocery wants to sell them. Yeah, for real. All these cans and oils and chemicals serve to make them edible. Still doesn't work well enough for anti-olive people. Have you noticed that grocery stores don't have windows? There are several reasons for that. First, they want you to spend more time inside and buy more stuff. For this purpose, they create a different atmosphere, cutting you off from the outside world. For example, you can't see it getting dark or raining outside, and you lose track of time, kind of like in a casino. But there are other reasons too. For example, having windows would decrease available space for shelves with products. Also, direct sunshine can cause products to go bad faster and make labels fade away. Did you know that H&M, the name of the clothing store, is short for Hennes & Mauritz? It's a Swedish company that originally was only selling women's clothes, and so it was called Hennes, which means hers in Swedish. Moritz Wildforce owned a hunting apparel retailer, which was then acquired by Hennes's owner. The store started to sell men's clothes too, and the name of the store changed to Hennes & Mauritz, or as we know it, H&M. Now, some more about marketing. I bet that whenever and wherever you buy your oranges, they're always in a red mesh bag. You rarely see them lying around without a bag. And it's all for a reason. The color of the bag was chosen carefully. When packed in a red mesh bag, oranges appear more orange, and they seem fresher and more appealing to you. So you're more likely to buy them. Lemons are usually sold in green mesh bags for a similar reason. If you pack them in red, they'll look more orange, and green goes better with yellow, making the lemon stand out. There are so many things I don't understand about the world, and one of them is this. Why do chocolate bars, like Mars or Snickers, have those zigzag waves on the bottom? Turns out, well, not surprisingly, that they appear during the manufacturing process. When a chocolate bar is produced, it lies on a patterned belt of an enrober. This machine coats the bar with melted chocolate and then keeps it at a particular temperature to make it freeze. The reason the belt is patterned and not smooth is to recover excess chocolate. When the bar freezes, the prints stay. Now, you've probably noticed that old chocolate can turn whitish on the surface. This happens because, with time, liquid fats contained in the chocolate bar, for example cocoa butter, start to travel up through the chocolate, crystallizing on top. That's the white powder, also known as fat bloom. It's completely harmless, so don't worry about it. And if you really hate it, well, just ship that chocolate over to me, and I'll dispose of it, orally. Lollipop sticks have those squared holes in their ends for a reason. When candy is put on a stick, some of it goes into the hole, fixating the sweet part. This way, the candy ball, or whatever shape it is less likely to fall off the stick. Egg yolks can be different colors, starting with pale yellow and ending with deep orange. What does it depend on? No, not the chicken breed. Those only affect the color of the shell. The color of the yolk depends on a chicken's diet. If its food has more yellow and orange pigments, the yolks will be darker. And yeah, yolks of any color are equally nutritional, so no worries. Since we're talking about farms, look at these barns. What do they have in common? Yep, the color red, and it seems like a trend. There were times before a wide variety of paints became available, when people had to make their own paint for their barns. Years ago, farmers were sealing barns with linseed oil, which is orange in color. And to that oil, they also added milk, lime, and rust. Rust was available and handy, and it had the power to get rid of moss and fungi. Together, these ingredients turned the mixture red, and that was used as paint. Nowadays, it's just a tradition many still follow. You've probably noticed those little rubber hairs on car and bike tires. Any special purpose? Well, no. They appear during the tire manufacturing process. Rubber is mixed with carbon black and put into a tire mold. Then it gets spread all over the mold under high air pressure. To make a good tire, the rubber should cover all the surfaces equally. But there's a problem. Air bubbles can form between the mold and the rubber. To make sure it doesn't happen and help extra air escape, tire molds have little holes all over them. Some rubber gets in there, and once the tire is ready, it turns into those little hairs. No one cares enough to remove them because that would be useless work, and those hairs don't harm anyone. Those little black dots on car windows are called frits. Nothing to fret about. They're supposed to make the surface of the glass rougher so that the adhesive can stick and glue the glass to the car frame better. The black enamel also blocks UV light that can melt the adhesive underneath the bands around the window. The black bands heat up faster than the transparent glass. And luckily, the little dots are there to help distribute the temperature evenly. Now, buses have such huge steering wheels for a reason. Buses are bigger than cars and also way heavier. So, it's harder to turn a bus around, and you need way more strength to do so when you drive a car. A bigger steering wheel, which has a bigger radius, allows the vehicle to turn more easily. And it requires less force than you need should the wheel be smaller. Trucks have big steering wheels for the same reason. Also, buses usually have those bright patterns on their seats. The reason is actually pretty disgusting. Those patterns are supposed to hide stains on the seats. The brighter the seat is and the more patterns it has, the harder it is for a passenger to notice stains. Even better, the patterns are usually so bright that no person wants to look at them for long enough to spot the stains. So yeah, the patterns are literally there to make you look away. And if you still do look, to make the dirt less noticeable. Can I please hear a ew? And that's the exact reason why hospitals and hotels use white sheets, to show how clean they are and how high their standards are. We all know there's light in refrigerators. I bet you've tried to peek inside to catch it turning off at least once. Yeah. But the freezer, on the other hand, doesn't have any light inside. So why is that, we have to ask? Well, the main reason is that installing an additional light in the freezer costs the manufacturer money. It might not seem like much, but keep in mind that it's not just a matter of one light, but also the wiring, the fixture, the switch, and so on. And manufacturers want to save as much money as possible. Besides, no one really needs a light in the freezer. It's not like you browse your freezer as often as the main part of the refrigerator. Also, in older freezers, ice crystallizes in the compartment, meaning that the light would get covered with ice anyways. Maybe that's why there was no light initially, and then it just stuck, or froze. Many backpacks have a diamond patch with two parallel cutout slits on the front. It's made for your convenience. You can attach something like a water bottle or a pair of shoes to this slit. It comes in especially handy when you go hiking. Imagine not having to hold all these things in your hands, 'cause you're gonna need your hands to fight off the bears. Hey, just kidding. You know, people come up with the craziest ideas, don't they? I mean, candies on a stick. How did we even get there, and why? And how about the name lollipop? Well, let's look at some of the history and facts of the popular treat. Okay, it wasn't called a lollipop to begin with. We'll get to that name a bit later. But the initial lollipop-like sweet treat was most likely invented by people that roamed the earth thousands of years ago while still living in caves, no less. We know that they enjoyed honey and used a stick to collect it from beehives. Remember, this was way back when people had very few resources when it came to food or anything else for that matter. So, since they did not want anything to go to waste, they probably ended up licking the stick to make sure they ate every single drop of the nectar. Ancient Egyptians also had a lollipop of their own. They took various fruits and nuts and glazed them in honey. Sure, it made the food taste better, but it also helped with preserving it for longer. Since it has such a high concentration of sugar, honey pushes the water out of any harmful cells that could damage the food and make it go bad faster. To avoid those sticky honey fingers, they used a stick for eating these treats too. Let's fast forward to the 1600s when sugar became far more available to the general public. We now know that the English loved boiled sugar candy treats, and they popped those in the sticks, making them easier to enjoy. It's probably during this time when we came up with the term lollipop, as linguists believe it basically translates to tongue slap. How come? Well, for the word tongue, they often use the word lolly in northern England, and pop means slap. The lollipop timeline now takes us to 1912, when a man named Samuel Bourne actually invented a device that inserted sticks into candy. It became so popular that Samuel was awarded the keys to the city of San Francisco in 1916. However, it was a man named George Smith who owned a confectionery company that took credit for inventing the version of the lollipop which we've come to know and love to this day, back in 1908. He even trademarked the name in 1931. He claimed the name for the treat came from a famous racehorse named Lollipop. As you can probably tell by now, there is still some competition regarding this name, but what we do know for sure is that the lollipop became more and more popular and has remained such ever since. I mean, some modern companies are capable of producing up to 3 million of these candies every day, and the numbers are continuously growing. The largest lollipop ever created goes back to 2012. When a Californian candy manufacturer made a staggering chocolate-flavored one. It weighed more than 7,000 pounds and stood proud at nearly 5 feet tall. And if we take the stick into consideration too, this huge lollipop was over 11 feet tall. One of the most famous lollipop brands in the world is Chupa Chups. Did you know this brand's logo has a very famous name behind it? It was that of none other than Salvador Dali himself, the famous surrealist artist. The company approached him in 1969 to design the logo, and he came up with a distinguishing design that we know and love, which has the Chupa Chups name incorporated into a brightly colored daisy shape. The famous painter also came up with the idea that the logo should be placed on top of the candy instead of on the side. Why? So that you can always see it perfectly without any of the wrinkles that are often associated with candy packaging. Smart, right? More so, this brand is also associated with candies we enjoy in the most uncommon places. A story goes that a Chupa Chups was the first lollipop to be eaten in space. That was back in 1995, when an astronaut brought a Chupa Chups to the space station, officially making it the first lollipop to be consumed in a zero-gravity environment. I wonder if it tasted any different. There's a Chupa Chups under the sea, too, but it's not actually what you think. It's not the easiest thing in the world to enjoy a lolly underwater, right? But as they were advancing into an expedition to the Weddell Sea in the Antarctic Ocean back in 2000, a group of scientists stumbled upon a weird-looking sea sponge. It had a round-shaped head and was surprisingly similar to a lollipop. Obviously, it was given an appropriate name. The short version was S. Chupa Chups. If you ever search for pictures of these creatures, they look like underwater lollipops scattered on the bottom of the seabed. Now, while we're on the subject of shape, ever wondered why lollipop sticks have that square hole featured in the plastic design? It actually has to do with the manufacturing process. When produced, the candy is melted into the stick. This ensures that the head of the lollipop stays firmly attached to its corresponding stick so that it doesn't come loose and end up falling off. Ooh, what a pity. Another reason is more of a safety feature, so the lollipop stick doesn't become a choking hazard if swallowed by accident. Since it does allow air to go through, there's still some breathing room should it ever get stuck somewhere unfortunate. These days, the company Tootsie Roll has become the largest manufacturer of lollipops. They make over 16 million candies each and every day. As for the Dum Dum lollipops, they got their name from their inventor. He wanted a name that was easy to pronounce and remember by the younger generation, the main demographic for the product. How about the Dum Dum mystery flavor? Is it actually that mysterious? Nah, it's actually a pretty straightforward recipe. They make it when one batch of flavor is running out and the next one is beginning. So the flavor comes out of random combinations of two different tastes, whatever they may be. But what does the famous writer Charles Dickens have to do with the lollipop? Well, it turns out that in the modern world, this name first appeared in one of his novels. That was back in the 1800s. Lollipops aren't all fun and games. Some of them are even used to cure people. They are especially handy for young ones who find it difficult to deal with traditional versions. But some of those lollipops are strictly for adults. If you're a big fan of this sweet treat, you might want to prepare for a nice celebration on the 20th of July each year. That's when people in America celebrate National Lollipop Day. It's common for people to give each other lollies during this day. Some stores even launch unique lines for this occasion and also put their best products on display. The lollipop has some neat world records attached to it too, like the longest chain of people licking lollipops, which featured a mind-boggling 12,831 individuals. They put the event together in Valladolid, Spain back in September of 2008. And for people looking for something fancier, you should know that the world's most expensive lollipop comes with a hefty price of over $10,000. It's not one single lollipop per se, but a chair made with 60 pounds worth of confectioner's sugar. We literally have no idea how many lollipops the world consumes each day in total. We do know what countries include the biggest fans, though, and they are Germany, Ireland, Switzerland, Australia, and the UK. And we don't just call it a lollipop. There are different names for it, depending on where you are in the world, such as a lolly, sucker, or sticky pop, for example. Hey, I grew up with suckers. The most common flavor, often associated with this sweet treat, is cotton candy. It's probably because it's way easier to enjoy than the actual cotton candy, but you can still appreciate the flavor. For me, though, nothing beats a cherry sucker. How about you? Tell me about your favorite flavor in the comments.
It's breakfast, and you crack open a hard-boiled egg. You find that it's green. Looks disgusting. Well, it looks like you cooked it for too long. This happened because of the thin sulfur layer in the whites and iron in the yolk. Though the mixture of these chemicals is black, it's such a thin layer mixed into the yellow yolk that it turns green. But don't fear, these strange green eggs, they're completely safe to eat. While sitting for a photo, it would be weird to say anything other than cheese to get that perfect smile. But in the 19th century, it was different. Photographers would ask their subjects to say prune instead. The reason was to obtain that thin, duck-like expression. It was considered a prim and proper way to present a photograph. Strawberries aren't even considered a berry and are more of a false fruit, further identified as multiple fruit. What we believe is that the tiny little brown or white things are seeds, but they're actually individual fruits attached to its flesh. But how did this mistake start in the first place? Well, the confusion began hundreds of years ago when it was first named. However, this was a long time before botanists were even around to help clarify this mistake. Sci-fi films are often inspired by real-life space exploration, but there's one thing that NASA implemented after watching a sci-fi movie. A 1929 flick, Woman in the Moon, introduced a countdown that built up anticipation. NASA found this helpful and started using it in 1969. Not only is it an exciting moment, but it does also have a practical use. It helps the massive team behind each launch ensure they're synchronized perfectly down to the last second. This one might change your appetite the next time you see a juicy apple. Usually picked around August to November, the shiny supermarket apples are covered in hot wax, then hot air dried and sent into cold storage. Before they arrive at the supermarket looking fresh, they've been in storage for anywhere between 6 to 12 months. I bet you can't do this. Try and hum while closing your nose. No noise came out, right? Without an exit for air, it's physically impossible to make any noise. The world's largest national park in Greenland covers a staggering 375,000 square miles. That's twice the size of California. But although it's huge, there are only up to 40 permanent residents in this massive area, making it one of the most isolated places on Earth. Issues with bad breath? Gum is the typical choice, but other things are just as effective. Cucumber is a great natural solution and a more efficient one. Working similarly to gum, it helps stimulate saliva production, but what makes it different from other odor defeaters is its water content. Washing away any unwanted pieces of food still remaining also helps to avoid a dry mouth, which causes odors. You would think that Z would be the last letter put into the alphabet, but it was actually J. Long ago in 1524, an Italian grammarian wanted to identify a way to separate I and J. Together, they were a vowel. and J was then used as a consonant that sounded like Y. It wasn't until 1633 when an English grammar book explained the proper use of J, and it was entered into the alphabet in the way we use it today. The first vacuum cleaner was invented in 1901, the size of a Winnebago, and it took 4 people to operate it. A petrol engine used to supply power also required a horse to move it around. I would suppose that it was mainly used for cleaning up after the horse in the end. It wasn't long after that they found easier ways to clean the house, and in 1910 the first handheld vacuum was invented. If you've been told that you sweat like a pig, there is no need to be offended. It's actually more of a compliment, as pigs don't sweat. All swine are born without sweat glands, and the only way to cool off is to find a nice puddle, or more famously, some mud. Umbrellas were invented around 4,000 years ago and were only socially acceptable for women to use them. Their original purpose was to keep the sun out of your eyes and as a fashion accessory. It wasn't until the mid-18th century that men were allowed to use them, and the modern, water-resistant version we use today was made. And most importantly, the very first dog umbrella was invented in 1965. Dentists can be very strict on what sweets you eat, so you would be amazed to learn that cotton candy was invented by a dentist. John C. Wharton, a dentist and confectioner, wanted to give his clients a treat every visit. Maybe he gave them this treat to ensure they came back more often. If we could theoretically build a highway to outer space and could adjust the effects of gravity, it would only take you an hour to drive to space if you drove at 60 miles per hour. Let's make this happen, Elon Musk. How heavy could a cloud be? It looks like it couldn't weigh too much as it floats easily up in the sky. But a cloud could weigh anywhere up to 1 million pounds. That massive cloud is able to float above you because the air's lighter up there and less dense than dry air below. You can see the same effect when observing oil floating on water. You think you yawn because you were bored or tired? Well, it's a myth. You yawn more often later in the day, but it's just your body helping you remain alert. Through inhaling cool air and stretching the muscles, it cools the flow to the brain. Researchers identified brain sizes in different species of animals based on their yawns. The larger the brain, the longer the yawn. So how long do you yawn? Playing video games regularly increases gray matter in the brain for all you gamers out there, which helps to boost brain connectivity through muscle control, memories, perception, and spatial navigation. An experiment at a New York medical center found that surgeons who played 3 hours of video games made 37% fewer mistakes and performed 27% faster than other non-gaming doctors. Have you ever wanted to be just a little bit taller? Well, get your space boots on. The human body can grow up to 3% taller when in space. While living on Earth, our spines are compressed by gravity. But in zero gravity, the decompression lets the spinal discs expand, allowing the spine to lengthen. Cows don't have full REM sleep while standing, but they can have a light nap. This is an evolutionary trait that helped their ancestors avoid predators. They stand idle during a power nap if they need to make a quick getaway. They do have full REM sleep, only by lying down. They only need 4 hours of sleep to fully energize for the next day. Women have more taste buds than men, and 35% of women are considered super tasters, and only 15% of men are. Not surprisingly, more women prefer pineapple on their pizza. Now, don't be triggered if you disagree. While sleeping, you're incapable of sneezing. This might seem impossible, especially when you have a cold. But while your body is resting, the nerves that help you sneeze are as well. While you sleep, the brain ignores any irritating sensations or tickling that would typically create the sneeze. Our calendar year once used to end in February. This is because it was the last month to be added to the calendar. A calendar year once only lasted 304 days, so there was plenty of room for more months. It was changed in the year 46 BCE to the calendar we know today by Julius Caesar. They previously followed the lunar calendar. Julius Caesar saw issues with this as it didn't match the seasons. He hired an astronomer who created a calendar based on the solar year.
Apples you usually grab in the supermarket seem super fresh, but they can be up to a year old. It's all about how they're stored. First, they're covered with wax. Next, the wax is dried with hot air. And finally, the apples go into cold storage. Sloths are better at breath holding than dolphins. Those lazy buddies can slow their heart rate and hold their breath this way for up to 40 minutes. If they watched any breathtaking series, they'd literally breathe once per episode. If you look at any old photograph, you'll see that people didn't have those big smiles we love to have in the photos today. First, photographers preferred to keep things serious. So, instead of cheese, people would say prunes to keep their lips tight, and other things. Earth is not the only planet with water. Scientists from NASA strongly believe one of Jupiter's moons, Europa, has an ocean with twice as much water as we have on our planet. It's hidden under a thick layer of ice. Even Mars has some liquid water flowing. Cicadas are some of the biggest flying insects you can find out there. Most species are not that impressive, only about 1 to 2 inches long. Only. But the largest one, known as the empress cicada, has a body length of about 3 inches. In comparison, its wingspan reaches a whopping 8 inches. That's a really big bug. Not all goats peacefully munch on meadow grass. Some of them prefer climbing trees for food. Meet Moroccan goats, a natural phenomenon unique to North Africa. The thing is, they're way more attracted to argan tree fruits than to regular grass. That's quite understandable. Those fruits look just like golden apples. These goats are quite agile, so they easily climb up the trees to get the juicy treats. And they rarely need help from their nanny. There's a creature that can technically live forever. You see, there's a species of jellyfish known as Turciforida, or however you pronounce their name on the screen. Well, those guys have a superpower of respawning. So whenever they get any sort of physical damage or something, those jellyfish reset themselves back to the polyp stage and start all over again. Now, let's test you. Are there more trees on Earth or stars in the Milky Way? If your answer is stars, sorry, you're wrong. According to scientists' estimations, there are up to 100 billion stars in our galaxy and about 3 trillion trees on Earth. Now, that's impressive. Pluto still hasn't made a complete orbit since it was discovered. And now imagine that it was found back in 1930. It takes about 248 years for Pluto to make a full orbit around the Sun. By the way, Mercury is the fastest. It takes only about 88 days for this planet to make a full trip. However, Pluto will complete its first full orbit since its discovery in 2178. I can't wait. One more fun fact about planets. The dwarf planet Haumea has a very peculiar shape. It looks exactly like a potato. It's about the same size as Pluto and has rings similar to those Saturn has. If you ever want to find it, it's located beyond the orbit of Neptune. Nachos aren't some ancient Mexican food. They were invented less than 100 years ago. Ignacio Aña, nicknamed Nacho, is said to have created this dish in the 1940s. There's a nice story behind nachos. A regular customer got really hungry and asked if Ignacio could bring her and her 3 friends something different that day. He saw how hungry the ladies were and decided to cook something quick for them. He had to improvise using available ingredients, so he put some tortillas, grated loads of cheese on top of them, and heated the dish from above. To make the dish more savory, he added some jalapeno peppers on top. Mamie Finan, that very regular customer, asked what the name of the unusual snack was. Ignacio didn't think long and said the name was Nacho Special. Oranges aren't necessarily orange. If grown in subtropical regions, the climate isn't cold enough to break down the chlorophyll, so the fruit peel stays yellow or greenish. Such oranges usually get treated with ethylene gas that can help turn the oranges orange. Orange you impressed with that? Okay, it's time for a little riddle for you. What's common between peanut butter and an engagement ring? Both of them contain diamonds. Scientists have learned how to turn peanut butter into diamonds. They extracted the oxygen from CO2. They got the carbon and then put it under intense pressure, and in the end, they got diamonds. In a jiff, I suppose. Pufferfish, also known as blowfish, are famous for 2 things. It's clumsy and it can literally turn into a sort of a balloon. Blowing themselves up helps them survive in the wild. They are inedible when swollen. Well, they're not entirely inedible even when they're deflated. Their poison is over 1,000 times more toxic than cyanide. Don't count on antidotes, they just don't exist, or probably we need more time to find one. Not only can people become knights, but penguins can do that too. There's one living in Edinburgh, and it was granted knighthood back in 2008. Meet Nils Olaf III, the mascot and colonel-in-chief of the Norwegian King's Guard. So, what size of shoes do you wear? I bet it's way smaller than the size the Statue of Liberty wears. No statue needs shoes, but if the Statue of Liberty wanted to grab a pair of new sneakers, she'd need to look for size 879. No surprise here, she's 151 feet tall. These are our muscles that can cause goosebumps. These tiny fan-shaped muscles are called erector pili, and we have them at the base of every hair follicle. Whenever it's cold, they get contracted, which makes our hairs literally stand up, creating goosebumps. You may think you're not an athlete, but if you've ironed your clothes in very uncomfortable locations at least once, you already are. Well, sort of. Extreme ironing is an extreme sport where people take ironing boards to very unexpected places, such as forests, canoes, or mountains, and iron the clothes there. Some do that even on the top of bronze statues or underwater. And yeah, there are even official championships. Haven't these people heard of permanent press? Rap battles aren't something that appeared recently. In medieval England, there was something called flyting, which was very much like contemporary rap battles. It was quite popular in the 15th and 16th centuries when two opponents mocked each other in an improvised battle. Tongue Map says we have different parts for different tastes. Well, not really. There are individual taste buds that sense certain flavors more than they do with some others, but it doesn't mean one area can taste sweet better than the other. Studies show that all mouth areas have taste buds sensitive to all tastes. Chameleons don't change colors because they want to match their surroundings. That would probably be a very tiring thing to do. In reality, some other things like mood, temperature, or the amount of light they get affect their color. When chameleons relax and stretch cells, crystals that are inside of them are affected by the light. These reptiles use crystals to communicate with each other. So, for example, darker shades show that they're not in such a good mood. It's more like they feel kind of grumpy. Ah, beware the grumpy chameleon. Turkeys can blush just like people do. It works the same way. They blush when angry, excited, or even feel bad. You can see the skin on their necks and heads turn red. Opossums don't really sleep while hanging by their tails. You see that in cartoons and some photos, but in general, they don't. Their tails are strong, so these animals can grip branches and hold their weight, but only for shorter periods. Adults are really too heavy to stay in this position for too long, so they wouldn't get too much rest. So I could say, hanging by their tail overnight is sort of impossible.
There are things about your body you know for sure, or don't you? Can you guess what exactly is a myth or fact? 1 point is for each correct answer. Let me know your score. Brown eggs are more nutritious than white eggs. Myth or fact? Myth. There is no study saying brown eggs are healthier than white eggs. The only difference is the color of the eggshell. The color of the eggshell doesn't affect its nutrition or quality. That is related to the type of chicken. Chickens with white earlobes tend to have white eggs. Have you heard that a large amount of the dust in your home is actually decanted skin? Not cool, I know. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a myth. You're not just mopping your skin flakes from the floor. Many other components make the house dust. Fibers, hair, building materials, mold, pollen, insect body parts, and ash are some of them, according to the study made in Canadian houses. This makes sense because a house nearby a busy highway or in a renovation area has more dust than a house in the middle of a forest. Skin is our largest organ. Is this a fact or myth? It's a fact. You might think for a second that the intestine can be quite large when you unfold it, but nope. Skin wins the contest. An adult carries around 8 pounds and 22 square feet of skin. Can't think of us without a skin. It's not just there to cover our bodies, it has an essential role in protecting us too. You can't breathe and swallow at the same time. Myth or fact? It's a fact. Maybe you already knew the correct answer. but you tried it anyway after reading this, so see it for yourself. So in your throat, there are two passageways important for your survival. I'm putting aside the fancy medical names, and I'll refer to those two as airway and food pipe. They prevent breathing and swallowing simultaneously. Otherwise, food would enter the airway and cause severe complications. This doesn't always go as planned. That's why sometimes you end up coughing and preventing the piece of food from reaching the lungs. As well as having unique fingerprints, humans also have unique tongue prints. Is this a myth or fact? Fact! The human tongue is magnificent enough in its features that make us taste the food. It's also unique in its texture. People use biometric systems like fingerprints, voice scans, and iris scans for authentication. They are important to the identification and verification phases. Tongue print is unique, so it's very hard to copy it. It can be used as a biometric system tool too. What if people started using this system in their daily lives for safety reasons? Imagine locking a safe or your phone with a tongue print. An adult spends 3 hours in the bathroom every week. Do you think this is a fact or a myth? It's a fact. A poll by scientists reveals that an average adult spends 3 hours and 9 minutes on the toilet every week. This is more than the time they spent exercising. Take your sweet time. No need to rush. You swallow 8 spiders a year while sleeping. Myth or fact? Don't believe it. Lucky for us, and for the spiders of course, this is not true. Fear no more and have a good night's sleep. Most spiders don't deliberately come near humans. Plus, vibrations coming from a sleeping person might be uncanny for them. Or maybe the spider just lives in the habitat. It thinks that you are flatmates sharing a room. As long as there is actual evidence, I call this a myth. Your thigh bone can resist thousands of pounds of force. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? Yes, this is a fact. People generally refer to it as tight bone, but its actual name is femur bone. This bone is located on the upper part of your leg. Experts say that this bone is hard to break. It's one of the 2 strongest bones in our anatomy. The first one is the temporal bone of the skull. If you wondered about the first one. Anyway, a tight bone can support 30 times more of your body weight. Maybe it's because the femur bone is the longest and largest bone in the human body. Do you believe that shaving your hair makes it grow back thicker? Fact or myth? Watch how I debunk that myth. Experts say shaving doesn't affect the thickness of the hair. The hair's head didn't remove, so the root is still there. You only shave the upper part. After a shave, the hair grows bluntly because it's been cut. That's why you may feel it's getting thicker. It's safe to eat food that's been on the floor for 5 seconds or less. Is this a fact or a myth? Sorry for blocking the best way you justify eating something that fell on the floor. There's no such thing as the 5-second rule. Researchers found that a substantial amount of bacteria transferred to the food within 5 seconds. The moisture of the food directly affects contamination. Imagine you drop a slice of watermelon and chips on the floor. I don't know why you're eating both together or how you end up dropping them both. But let's continue with this example anyway. The watermelon will have more contamination than chips. Because watermelon has more moisture in it, the surface of the watermelon is more open to transferring bacteria. Blondes and redheads may soon disappear. Myth or fact? An easy one, right? This is a myth. Red or blonde-colored hairs are connected to recessive genes. They can be carried from one generation to another without creating the hair color of the carrier. If both parents have the correct recessive genes, the chances are high that the next generation will have blonde or red hair. These genes are rare, but populations still have those genes carried out, so they won't get lost forever. For that to happen, literally everyone on the planet who carries that gene must disappear. So, the chances are low. Drinking coffee dehydrates you. Is it a fact or myth? Myth! You can enjoy your morning coffee. Okay, you may visit the bathroom more frequently after drinking coffee, but it doesn't mean you're losing more water. There are numerous studies made about the effects of caffeine. Some of these studies reveal that drinking a reasonable amount of coffee a day doesn't increase the risk of dehydration. Eating yogurt helps your digestion. Do you think this is a fact or just another myth? A fact, but with the right choice of yogurt. Yogurt is food containing probiotics. They are the good bacteria that make everything flow smoothly in your gut. Eating yogurt alone may not be enough to have a healthy digestive system. It supports the digestive system positively. Keep in mind, though, not all yogurts are equal. Some of them have sugar in them, or they come with toppings like candy or cookies. Go for the classic ones. Your hair will grow faster if you have it cut more often. Fact or myth? We were always told not to cry too much over the hair we lost because it would grow back faster. Unfortunately, the hair growth rate doesn't depend on how often you get a haircut. The average hair growth rate is 0.01 inches per day. Plus, many factors affect it: age, hormones, and even the time of year. Knowing this new fact may make some people postpone their hairdresser appointments.
Now, there are things about nature that you know for sure, or don't you? Let's check how much you know about the incredible world we live in. How many of the 14 points will you guess? Let us know. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built when mammoths still roamed the earth. Myth or fact? It's actually a fact. The most famous pyramid in the world had been constructed about 500 years before woolly mammoths went extinct, approximately 4,000 years ago. Their last known habitat was the cold and deserted Wrangel Island in the Arctic Sea, which might not have been as cold then as it is today. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Is it myth or fact? It's a fact. Scientists used to believe there were about 4 billion trees on our planet, but more recent studies have shown that there are over 3 trillion of them, making it 420 trees per person. As for the stars in our galaxy, there are only about 100 billion, which is 30 times fewer than the trees on Earth alone. The trees you see are all individual ones. Myth or fact? This is false. In fact, 90% of the trees on Earth are interconnected by mycelium filaments. They send warning signals when in danger and exchange nutrients through them. It's kind of like the underground internet. Also, there are organisms like Pando, for example, which is the largest single living being on the planet. It looks like a dense forest of quaking aspens. In fact, it's basically a single giant tree, with its roots being interconnected underground. We drink the same water dinosaurs used to drink hundreds of millions of years ago. Myth or fact? Actually, it is. Only a small portion of the water on our planet has evaporated for good. The rest of it is constantly renewed. So, mammoths, dinosaurs, and whatever came before them billions of years ago drank and swam in the same water we see today. Not to mention what else they did in the water. Unfortunately, the water doesn't keep information about those ancient creatures for us to find out more about them. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. Are you willing to bet on that? Myth or fact? If you aren't, good for you. Lightning may strike the very same spot as many times as it wants. It might seem random, but the electrical discharge from the sky is pulled toward the tallest objects in the thunderstorm area. Also, the material this object is made of matters too. It's by no chance that lightning rods on buildings are mostly made of copper and aluminum alloys. These metals are some of the most conductive materials, so they pull lightning very efficiently. All deserts are hot. Now, this one's easy, right? Myth or fact? If you guessed it's a myth, then right you are. Deserts are qualified not for their temperature, but for the presence or absence of growth and life in them. The most well-known desert is the Sahara, of course, and it is indeed very hot. The actual largest desert in the world is Antarctica, which is almost twice the size of the Sahara Desert. And you wouldn't call it even lukewarm. It's a polar desert, and there are several others on our planet. For example, Greenland. There's enough gold underground to cover the entire planet in a thick layer. Would you believe that? Well, you should, because it's true. Since 1950, humanity has mined nearly 200,000 tons of gold. If we made a cube out of all this metal, it would be 70 feet high and wide. Recent data from scientists confirm that there are huge reserves of gold in the Earth's core. The metal is enough to cover the whole planet, and people might have gold up to their knees. The problem is, we just can't mine it from there. Hey, I don't mine if you don't. The Moon and Mars are better mapped than the Earth's oceans. Now, this can't be true, can it? Actually, it can. We have a detailed map of the Moon and Mars, although we're still discovering surprises on their surfaces, granted. Still, over 80% of the Earth's oceans are unmapped and unexplored. We can't study the oceans properly because of pressure, cold, and lack of light underneath billions of tons of water. The lava is always red. What other color can it be, right? Myth or fact? Myth. Usually lava is really red or orange because it's basically molten rock from the deep bowels of our planet. But there's one volcano in Indonesia whose lava is blue and luminescent. Only at night though. During the day, it looks normal. No mystery about it, just tons of sulfuric gas. This volcano also has the largest acidic crater lake in the world. The water there is so turquoise, you want to jump in immediately, but you probably guessed you should never do that. The fire on that volcano is also blue, the largest blue fire in the world, rising up to 16 feet high. Ever seen a gas stove burning? Here, the principle is basically the same. You can see a rainbow at night, too. Is it myth or a fact? It's true, and there's even a name for this phenomenon, a moonbow. Also called a lunar rainbow, this event occurs extremely rarely. It's similar to a regular rainbow, except when it appears on a clear moony night after a rain shower. There's a thing called a fire rainbow, myth or fact. You bet! It's a beautiful phenomenon when the clouds in the sky are painted all the colors of the rainbow, looking like a fiery, multicolored cascade. It only occurs when the conditions are right, and those are very specific. It's close to the equator, the weather is clear, there are feather-like clouds in the sky, the sun is higher than 58 degrees above the horizon. Such clouds are made of ice crystals. When the sun's rays hit them, the particles refract the light and create a rainbow. Wow! There are rainbow trees, myth or fact. If I made you doubt this, I'm glad, because this one is not photoshopped. This is the rainbow eucalyptus, and their bark may literally have all the rainbow colors. These eucalyptuses shed their bark at different times each year. Every time the old section goes off, the tree first reveals bright green bark that was hiding underneath, and then it may turn any color. There's a whole set of hues: orange, maroon, blue, even purple. Stones can move on their own. Myth or fact? Well, you'd be right to believe me. There's a desert plain in California where rocks move around of their own will. Once this plain used to be the bottom of a lake, but then it dried out and became an arid wasteland. Sometimes rains fall here, flooding the entire valley. When night comes, the temperature drops and the water is covered with a thin layer of ice. When it gets warmer again, the ice breaks into segments and the wind pushes them around the place. Some of these ice shards take small rocks with them. When the ice melts for good and the water evaporates, the only thing that remains are trails left by the rocks, as if they'd moved on their own. Mud puddles can move around. Myth or fact? In fact, a single mud puddle in the world also travels as it wants, and nobody still knows why. It moves at a pace of about 20 feet per year, and it seems to have started its journey near the San Andreas Fault in California. People have tried to stop its march, but couldn't. So far, this creeping natural disaster isn't showing any signs of stopping on its own either. So, there's your pesky, problematic puddle to ponder.
You'd need a drop of liquid, a state-of-the-art laser 3D printer, and a couple of hours of work to make the tiniest fidget spinner ever. Its width will be smaller than that of your hair strand. At least researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory managed to do just that. A double-stuffed Oreo cookie aren't double-stuffed, in fact. A math teacher weighed 10 regular Oreos, 10 double-stuffed Oreos, 10 mega-stuffed Oreos. Turns out, double-stuffed Oreos are only 1.86 stuffed Oreos. Chipotle peppers aren't some special type of pepper. They're good old jalapenos. Dried and smoked jalapeno is chipotle. In its gaseous form, oxygen is colorless and doesn't have any odor. But when it's liquid or solid, this substance looks pale blue. After being caught by a black hole, a star gets ripped apart by its enormous gravitational forces. Some parts of the star's remains hurtle into the black hole. The rest, in the form of a huge jet of plasma, is ejected with such force that it travels hundreds of light years away. Not so long ago, scientists decided the dino's family tree had to be redrawn for the first time in 130 years. Apparently, two species of dinosaurs had to be grouped together from the very beginning. Those were the lizard-hipped meat-eaters like T-Rex and bird-hipped vegetarians such as the Stegosaurus. A camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in a bit more than 10 minutes. This water is stored in the animal's bloodstream. As for its fatty hump, it provides the camel with nourishment when there's little food around. Some sea animals like salmon or turtles use our planet's magnetic field to find their way home. Your lungs not only help you breathe, but they also produce blood cells. These cells are responsible for the clotting which stops bleeding. The lungs make more than 10 million of these tiny cells per hour. Only two letters never appear on the periodic table. Those are J and Q. Spin a ball when you drop it and it'll fly through the air while falling. This phenomenon is known as the Magnus effect. You can see it at work in different sports, for example tennis or baseball. Anatidaephobia is the fear that at any point, somewhere in the world, a duck or a goose may be watching you. The person isn't necessarily afraid that the duck or goose will get close to them or even touch them. They just don't like the feeling of being watched. It was first described in a comic strip to show you how anyone can be afraid of anything. Anything can be a phobia. A duck just watching my every move would certainly give me the heebie-jeebies. I might just quack up. Your favorite fruit candies may be shining because they're covered with carnauba wax. Many fruits, especially apples, have a thin layer of this wax too. Not only can it make the candies and fruit appear glossy, but it also makes your car shine. Peaches and nectarines seem different, but in fact, they're pretty much the same fruit. If the fluffiness gene is dominant, we get peaches. If not, we get smooth nectarines. Crows are pretty good at recognizing people's faces and have been found to remember people for a long time. This could be a good or a bad thing depending on how nice you are to them. You don't want to come across a crow that's holding a grudge against you. You probably can't tell which crow is which very easily, so it might be better to play it safe and just give them a little wave. In the city of Yoro in Central America, they have an annual event known as the Rain of Fish. Not that the locals get a choice for it anyways. Every year in May or June, a torrential rainstorm rolls through the town, leaving a mass of fish flopping around in the streets. The phenomenon is believed to be caused by waterspouts or water tornadoes, which drop the fish far from their home. Seafood delivery for free? Yes, please. A single strand of spaghetti onto your fork has a name. It's called a spaghetto. In the Italian language, an I at the end of a word means that it's plural, while an O is singular. This goes for all types, like gnocco instead of gnocchi, fettuccino instead of fettuccine, and raviolo for a single parcel of goodness. Water can freeze and boil at the same time. This is called the triple point. That's when a substance can be solid, liquid, and gaseous at the same time. But there's only one pressure temperature that can make it possible. We're used to ranch dressing being white, but in reality, producers usually add titanium dioxide to make it as white as your sunscreen. Oh, sunscreen producers add some titanium dioxide to their products too. Same with Caesar and blue cheese dressings. Our moon used to have an atmosphere. Several volcanic eruptions happened on Earth's natural satellite around 4 billion years ago. They released immense volumes of gas, trillions of tons. It was so much that the gas didn't have enough time to escape into space. That's how an atmosphere was formed. Cold water heats up faster than hot. The speed of this process depends on the temperature difference between the liquid and its surroundings. That's why cold water needs less time to absorb heat, but it doesn't mean it'll boil faster than hot water. Zealandia is a drowned continent in the Pacific Ocean. It's often described as a continental fragment or a microcontinent. Its area is almost 2 million square miles, about half as big as the US. It went underwater about 23 million years ago. New Zealand is Zealandia's largest part that remains above sea level. People are still evolving. Scientists have been tracking several millions of human anomalies. It turns out some harmful genes are slowly but surely getting filtered out of human DNA. Stars look as if they're twinkling because of the turbulence in Earth's atmosphere. It makes the light from the stars move in a different direction before reaching our eyes, and this looks as if the light is shaking. It takes water 1,000 years to complete its continuous journey around the world. The whole process is known as the global ocean conveyor belt. Bismuth is a brittle, shiny white metal with a pink tinge. If you melt it and then let it cool really slowly, it'll form iridescent cubic crystals. Those Skittles and M&M candies are colored with beetles. Red food dye is made of carmine, which is made with cochineal beetles. Red lipsticks are made with these beetles too. The rocks, metals, and other minerals and things that make up the planet are packed into the ground more tightly in certain places than in others. This has surprising consequences. Gravity varies slightly depending on where you are. How high up you are also has an effect, so if you're at the top of Mount Everest, you'd also weigh slightly less. Don't look down. One scientist has a theory that a substance existed in ancient microbes before chlorophyll, that's the thing that makes plants green, evolved on Earth. This substance reflected sunlight as red and violet colors, which combined to make purple. If true, the young Earth may have been teeming with strange, purple-colored critters before all the green stuff appeared. Apples taste better when they're sliced because they're exposed to oxygen. It activates the enzyme called polyphenol oxidase, responsible for ripening and visible browning. The same thing happens when you hit an apple. The oxygen enters the apple through tiny cracks and it starts to ripen. Are you into white chocolate? Well, it's actually not even close to real chocolate. It's basically a mixture of sugar, milk, vanilla, and cocoa butter. Cocoa butter isn't enough for chocolate. It should contain chocolate liquor or powder. The only product that never expires, even if you don't store it in the fridge, is honey. It has a low pH and lots of sugar. That's why organisms that cause spoiling can't live in honey. If two pieces of the same kind of metal touch in space, they bond and get stuck together. It doesn't happen on Earth because water and air keeps pieces apart. people are more honest when they're tired. That's why most confessions are made during late-night conversations. Firefighters usually extinguish flames with wet water. It's water mixed with special wetting agents. These are chemicals that help water soak into objects and spread everywhere more easily. The Sun is an average-sized star, and still it could fit 1,300,000 Earths. The star is also 333,000 times as heavy as our planet. People have been able to spell their emails in Morse code since 2004. That's when a new symbol, @ was added to the code for the first time. The character is actually called a comet and consists of the A and C signals with no break in between. The Empire State Building's tower was designed to serve as a docking station for dirigibles. At that time, people believed that these airships would become the main means of transportation in the future. The project included gangplanks, check-in and customs offices, and so on. But then the engineers realized that the wind up there was too strong for their plans, and they gave up on their idea. Angel Falls, the largest uninterrupted waterfall on the planet, is more than twice as tall as the Empire State Building. During the dry season, the falling water sometimes evaporates before it reaches the ground. One of the most mysterious sounds ever heard on Earth was the bloop. It occurred in 1997 and resembled the noise of marine animals, but the volume was too great for a sound produced by a living creature. The bloop continued for 1 minute. It started from a low rumble and then rose in frequency. Antarctica might just look like a giant field of ice, but there's actually a huge continent underneath. That means that it has volcanoes, mountains, and valleys, like any other continent. Scientists have recently discovered that the Antarctic landmass has the lowest point on the planet, as well as huge mountain ranges. If any of the numerous volcanoes were to erupt, it would melt a huge part of the surface ice and increase the spill of ice into the ocean. The sea level would rise and flood coastal areas around the world. The ocean waters would also be disrupted, putting marine life at risk, though all of these volcanoes are dormant at the moment. Each day on the South Pole lasts 6 months on this continent. The South Pole only has a single sunset and sunrise across an entire year. Early Earth might have been purple, not green. There's a theory that ancient microbes used molecules rather than chlorophyll to absorb sunlight. These molecules likely gave living organisms a violet tint. During the Stone Age, the entire population of Central Europe was around 1,500 people, which means they would all fit on a mid-sized cruise liner these days. Astronomers have figured out that the Milky Way weighs around 1.5 trillion solar masses, and one solar mass is the mass of our Sun. A tiny part of this weight is a supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, and 200 billion stars. The rest is dark matter, mysterious and invisible. If all sheets of Arctic ice and glaciers melted at the same time, the sea level would rise for the height of a 26-story building. Under black or UV light, ripening bananas look bright blue. That's because of the chlorophyll that's breaking down when the fruit is ripening. Because of tectonic plate movements, the Pacific Ocean shrinks every year, and the Atlantic Ocean gets bigger by the same amount. These days, there are only 2 ice sheets in the world left after the planet's last ice age. The first is the Greenland ice sheet. The second, the Antarctic ice sheet, is enormous. It's the size of Mexico and the continental US combined. Tsunami waves often go unnoticed. They don't rise for more than several inches above the surface until they reach shallow waters. When the ocean is deep, though, they can travel as fast as a long-distance passenger airplane. Corals that live in shallow waters produce their own protection from the sun. Without it, sunlight would harm the algae living inside them. To protect these algae, which are the main source of food for the corals, they fluoresce. This process makes proteins that act as sunscreen. Almost 90% of the volcanic activity on Earth happens in the oceans. The South Pacific has the largest concentration of volcanoes people know about. There's one volcano cluster that has 1,133 volcanic cones. All of them are active and cooped up in an area the size of New York State. The Zemchug Canyon in the middle of the Bering Sea is the largest underwater canyon ever discovered. There are more treasures and artifacts at the bottom of the ocean than in all museums in the world combined. In 1900, one of the biggest hurricanes struck near Central America and in the Gulf of Mexico. It then went as far as Florida and Texas and is considered to be the most devastating hurricane in the United States history. They first detected it on August 27th, and it lasted for many days. By the time it reached the Texas coast, the storm had turned into a Category 4 hurricane. Hurricanes are categorized on wind speed and intensity using something called a Saffir-Simpson scale. There are 5 different categories from 1 to 5, with 1 being the weakest and 5 being the strongest. The people of Galveston had less than 4 days to prepare for the arriving storm that even stretched out to Oklahoma and Kansas. The Great Hurricane then made its way to the Great Plains and turned towards the Great Lakes, New England, and reached southeastern Canada. The storm was so bad that more than 3,600 homes were damaged, even though they were sturdy enough to withstand the storm. Given the population numbers back then, it was equivalent to hundreds of thousands of houses destroyed, if not millions. Spotted Lake, Canada. They call it the most magical spot in Canada. In winter and spring, this is just a regular lake that looks like any other, but try going there in the summer when the water starts to evaporate. It'll feel as if you've entered a different world, a polka-dotted landscape with blue, green, and yellow spots. Over the summer, there are over 300 pools there, and they all look magical. Over the centuries, people believed each of them had different healing properties. Oh, and the explanation for the vibrant colors is pure science. Each of them has a high concentration of different minerals. We live inside the sun. Its atmosphere stretches far beyond its visible surface, and even though Earth is 93 million miles away from the star, it's still within reach of the sun's atmosphere. Auroras happen when charged particles from the sun get caught by Earth's magnetic field and crash into the upper atmosphere near the poles. Our planet is gradually slowing down the speed of its rotation. It happens at an unhurried pace of 17 milliseconds per 100 years. Because of this, our days are becoming longer, and still, only after 140 million years, a day on Earth will last 25 hours. Earth's southernmost continent, Antarctica, is only the 5th largest one, but it contains almost 70% of the planet's fresh water and 90% of the world's ice. Antarctica is also considered to be a desert. Lots of rocks on Earth have a Martian origin. Scientists analyze the chemical content of some meteorites found in the Sahara Desert, Antarctica, and other places. It turned out that these rocks had arrived from the Red Planet. The largest sandcastle in the world is located in Denmark. 30 sand sculptors who created it used more than 5,000 tons of sand. To make it more durable, they added 10% of clay, together with a layer of glue. They built it to stand tall against long and stormy winters. Some photons that don't get absorbed are re-emitted, and their wavelength determines the color we see. When you expose a material to sunlight or photons of higher energy, it can damage its chromophores, which is why they won't be able to emit photons at certain wavelengths. Red materials fade in sunlight the most. Their chromophores emit red light in a way they mop up photons of the rest of the wavelengths. From 60 to 100 tons of space dust drift down to our planet's surface every day. These tiny cosmic particles are mostly released by comets, which are usually made of dust and ice. When the sun turns this ice into vapor, the remaining dust travels down to Earth. There are 2 sides to every story. Just like to a regular cotton pad, 2 different textures to be more precise. One is smooth, and you're supposed to use it for more sensitive areas of your face, for example, the eyes. The rougher side can help you remove makeup and clean your face in less sensitive areas, like the forehead. If you like having greenery in your home, you've probably noticed the flower pots have holes at the bottom. These holes are the reason your green friends live a happy life. They're extremely important for water drainage. Thanks to these holes, you'll avoid stagnant water buildup that can eventually ruin your plant. Also, thanks to those holes, roots can grow and expand beyond the limits of your pot. Have you noticed aviator sunglasses mostly have green lenses? It has something to do with their origin. First, they showed up in the 1930s. Before that, pilots had goggles to protect their eyes while they were in the air. High altitudes with glaring sun and sub-zero temperatures were a real test for their eyes. The goggles helped them with those issues, but there was another one. Since the temperature differences between the air outside and within the goggles were big, the lenses would fog up and obscure the pilot's view. So, the company Bausch & Lomb came up with teardrop lenses surrounded by a light metal frame. These lenses were dark green because this tint cuts out blue light, which is also a problem for pilots when they're flying above the cloud line. Plus, green lenses also reduce glare and improve contrast and sharpness. Holes in the side of your Converse sneakers? Are those really necessary? Well, they allow air to enter your shoe so your feet can stay cool. You can also use them to style up your shoes and tie them in different ways too. There are 2 reasons plastic bottles have grooves. First, if you're drinking cold water and it's hot outside, you'll see there's a lot of condensation on your bottle. Or maybe if you're playing some sport or working out. Your hands are sweaty, and if a bottle had a smooth surface, it would be more difficult to grip it. So the ridges are there to improve your hand grip. The second reason is that because of these ridges, manufacturers can use thinner plastic. That means they need less material in overall production. And that plastic is still firm enough for the bottle to maintain its shape. Wooden coat hangers are not just there to look nice. Since they're made of cedar wood, they bring a nice scent to your closet. Plus, they repel bugs. They're also quite firm, so they come in handy for heavy clothes, such as jackets. And it's hard to damage them. So, they'll serve you longer. You may have noticed there's a colored square at the bottom of your toothpaste. These blocks mostly come in blue, red, green, and black. They are some sort of eye marks, since they help manufacturing machines at the assembly line recognize where and when to cut the toothpaste and seal the end of the tube. Some boots have loops at their top and back. Looks like a fashion statement, doesn't it? Or maybe it's something that manufacturers add for fun. But those loops actually have their purpose. With them, you can pull the shoe up when trying to wear it. Plus, you can easily hang them or use the loop for better support for the laces. Confession time. Remember those attachments your vacuum cleaner came with? Did you also put them somewhere aside and never use them again? They're actually pretty helpful when you're cleaning the house because you can use them for particular areas that are sometimes hard to reach with the regular attachment. We all know what the vegetable peeler is for, but besides peeling the skin of carrots or potatoes, you can use it for onions too. It may be faster than doing it with a knife, plus it will save you some onion tears. Some sweatshirts have something pretty specific in the neck area. A V-shaped stitch you can see in the middle of the collar. The ribbed insert, similar to the ribbing at the hem and the sleeves, would allow the owner to put the garment on more easily, and it wouldn't even lose shape. The V insert would stretch, so a person wearing the sweatshirt could get their head through the neck. Its purpose was also to absorb sweat. In its early versions, sweatshirts had both the back and the front of the collars. Through time, they lost the back one, and this V insert became something decorative since manufacturers started to stitch a V at the collar without using the ribbed material they had added before. Brightly colored squares or circles you see on food packages aren't an indication of vitamins, minerals, or certain flavors that food contains. And nope, it's not some secret code consumers are supposed to crack. It's actually for printing engineers. They're called process control patches or printer's color blocks. During the process of printing the food packaging, manufacturers use those colored blocks to check if the printing ink is correct. They compare the color of blocks they print to make sure the brand they print for has a consistent and recognizable quality all over the world. The majority of printers only use 4 colors: yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. Some printers have additional colors, such as green, orange, and violet. That's why you sometimes see multiple circles on certain packages. they test each ink color. Margins in notebooks. They're not there as some sort of a guide for taking notes and writing. Someone came up with a potential solution that was supposed to protect the written work from, well, rats. They used to be pretty common residents in people's homes. They are known for their diet, including basically anything, like paper, for example. So, people started adding wide margins as an appetizer that was supposed to keep rats full. This way, they wouldn't want to get to the main dish, the written pages. Suits have a buttonhole close to the top of the lapel. Manufacturers sew it shut so you can't open it without ruining your suit. And when you compare it to the other lapel, you see that one is completely smooth, without any clues. You won't find such an unpartnered buttonhole on a suit jacket only. Camp shirts, pea coats, and some other clothing pieces have them too. And they have to do with the history of lapels. The earliest ones showed up at the beginning of the 19th century. Before this, men mostly wear frocks with high collars. They would button them all the way up to the top. During hot days, they would relax the button stance, turn down the collars, and leave the top button undone. It was a relief from the swelter, plus their folded over laps would be symmetrical at the chest, and today, we recognize that as a lapel. People stopped using that buttonhole after they came up with the lapel, unless it was for some formal occasion. Like, for example, when you wanted to put a flower in there. That's why suit makers left it, as a fashion feature. Tea bags. It's pretty easy to guess what they're for, but they come in handy if you have smelly feet after a long day in your shoes. Just pop tea bags, unused of course, in your shoes during the night. By the time you wake up, tea bags are going to effectively absorb all the unwanted odors. Binder clips can also have a helpful purpose besides their main one. You can clip your money to keep it together. Same is true for paper clips. If your favorite bracelet broke and you're looking for a way to hold it on, a paper clip might help. Just hook one through each end of the bracelet, twist it tightly, and your bracelet is good to go.
In a supermarket, you pass by a shelf with eggs and try to decide which ones are better, the white ones or the brown ones. There's practically no difference between them. The egg's color depends on the breed of the chicken. These birds produce two different color pigments. You can take eggs of any color because the nutritional components of the eggs are almost the same. So, what came first, the brown egg or the white egg? Never mind. It's enough to use a small amount of toothpaste to brush your teeth, the size of a pea. But the ads show that you have to cover the entire toothbrush with paste as a marketing ploy. Manufacturers want you to buy a new tube faster. A plane leaves white lines behind in the blue sky thanks to the condensation of carbon dioxide, steam, and burning fuel. In winter, heated air visibly comes out of your mouth. The same principle works here. It's always icy at the altitude where planes are flying. Exhaust and hot air comes out of the turbines. When it collides with cold air, it creates thick lines of steam. Almost all hotels have white bed sheets. They choose this color specifically to show how high their standards of cleanliness are. The whiter and brighter the sheets are, the more luxurious the hotel seems. It's much easier to see dirt and stains on white linen. It's like proof that you've checked into a cleaned room. Gasoline looks like a rainbow in a puddle because it can't mix with water. It forms a thin membrane over it. When light reflects from it and the water at the same time, you've got a rainbow. The Do Not Disturb sign on your hotel room door is not a requirement but just a suggestion. Maids and staff have the right to go there if they suspect something's wrong, especially if you don't remove the sign for 24 hours. Why do clocks go to the right? The sun is the main reason. In ancient times, when people invented the sundial, the sun's shadow was moving to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. Mechanical clocks were first invented in the northern hemisphere, so it always goes right. Or, as we now say, clockwise. Why are the cups at parties colored red? Because it helps you quickly find your drink on the table among snacks and drinks, and all those other red cups. Here's a hint. Write your name, Michael, on the cup, if your name is Michael. Also, red is considered a color that provokes action. At the psychological level, it seems the red cup is commanding you, "Hey, drink me up." They believe yellow taxis have their roots in 15th century Italy. One postal businessman used yellow cabins for delivering mail. He wanted everyone to recognize his cards. About 60 to 80% of people, mostly aged 15 to 25, occasionally have goosebump-induced déjà vu moments. It's fleeting and unpredictable, and scientists are still not 100% sure why it happens and can't control it. To understand it better, they tried to create memories for patients under hypnosis. Then they asked them to forget or remember the memory, and it made them experience déjà vu later. Other scientists tried to recreate it in virtual reality with scenes in games that looked alike. The experiments made them believe déjà vu is your memory playing tricks on you. You get into a situation that's similar to a real memory that you have, but you can't remember it completely. Your brain notices the similarities and leaves you with a strange feeling of already seen. That's how déjà vu translates from French. Another version is that it's a memory glitch. It's more likely to happen when you're stressed. So, when you're under pressure or have a lot of information to process at once, some of it can end up in long-term memory instead of short-term memory. So, you take your best friend Max to the doggy park. He meets the labradoodle of his dreams, and they start playing together. Peaceful tail wagging quickly grows into biting each other. Oh no, they're going for the necks! You grab Max and rush back home. Well, in fact, there was no need to rush home. Playing with open mouths is called mouth wrestling or jaw sparring. It's a healthy way of interaction between dogs. They inherited this habit from their wolf ancestors. When a dog is a puppy, it has to learn some important skills, including fighting. Mouthing is just an imitation of it. When a puppy matures, it will know how to protect itself and respect boundaries of other doggos. All the chasing, wrestling, growling, and face biting is a way to socialize with others and have fun in the dog world. It's something like sibling rivalry and playful fights in the human world. Cute kittens and cats under the age of 2 also practice mouthing. They often tumble over each other and bite one another's necks to let their hunter instincts out. In the wild, cats are fast and merciless, and they can't hide it behind all the purrs in the world. Play biting with other kitties can also teach your little Mr. Biscuit to be more gentle when it plays with you and other humans, so it's all good. Cats like to sharpen their claws on your furniture to leave a visual mark on their territory. They also do it to let their claws renew and stretch their back and shoulders. The couch seems perfect for it, because it's not too short and is sturdy enough. Well, you gotta find a good replacement with the same qualities to let your kitty scratch and release its emotions. Cats freak out when they see a cucumber because it looks too much like their longtime enemy, snakes. They're naturally programmed to jump up in the air to protect themselves from a bite. Anything that looks similar, from toys to eggplants, causes a similar reaction. It's never a good idea to show them things like that for fun. It can really mess up their mental health. Fish have gills and fins, but they don't have necks. Instead, they have a series of bones that connect their skull and shoulder girdle. One of the reasons for that is it would be really hard to be fast while swimming if they had a neck waggling back and forth. Plus, the moment a creature similar to a fish developed a neck, science automatically classified it as another group of animals. That means the official definition says if a creature has a neck, we can't call it a fish. The oldest neck scientists have on record belongs to one unusual creature that lived 375 million years ago. It was part fish and part tetrapod, which is a term for an animal with 4 limbs. Now, rain won't always make the ground wet. There are very hot and dry areas where rain can evaporate even before it gets to the ground. It's something called phantom rain. You can see dense curtains of drops coming from above, but at the same time, nothing's on the ground, and none of the water reaches the living beings. Rats laugh when you tickle them. They mostly giggle when being tickled, and during one experiment where researchers tickled them, they even chased after their hands in a playful manner. All of the great apes, which is a group that includes gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, and chimpanzees, are ticklish too, and generally respond to tickling with a pretty distinctive human-like laugh. Penguins, dogs, meerkats, and many others also seem to pretty much like it. Different nations have different systems when it comes to vehicle registration, including license plate color. Australia goes with an unlimited palette when it comes to plates. They include many different motifs and designs. In the UK, cars have two possible number plate colors, yellow at the back of a vehicle and white at the front. Both have black characters. Now, it wasn't always like this. Number plates in this country used to have either white or silver characters. But starting from 1979, all vehicles must have the exact plates we see today for a reason. Every registration plate must be made from reflective material. So if the number plate at the back of your car is white, it might reflect white light, which is not legal. Elephants have enormous ears, and normally they can hold them out to scan noise back and forth. But there are sometimes distant vocalizations and noise they can hear with their feet. When they detect something that's far away, elephants freeze and lean forward. They transfer weight to their front legs and may even lift up a front foot. Hearing with your toes. That's quite a feat.
Our skin is the biggest and fastest growing organ. Strong but flexible. It's a waterproof yet breathable barrier that keeps us safe from the external world. Our skin regenerates itself. It helps with regulating body temperature and reduces water loss. This has helped us to evolve into what we are today. Our skin developed melanin, a natural pigment that blocks harmful UV radiation. Special sweat glands helped our ancestors regulate their temperature while walking long distances in unpleasant conditions. Your body has between 2 and 5 million sweat glands. The more active you are, the more sweat they produce. Your body has a mechanism to recognize it's time for you to cool off, so you can keep up with the workout. Breathing isn't only about moving the air inside and outside. It's about the way you do it, because it can literally affect your face shape. If you breathe through your nose, you'll get well-defined cheekbones over time. It will also make your face wider, because your tongue will exert force against your jaw. If you breathe through your mouth, your tongue won't have a place to rest. It will change your facial structure as time goes by. Your face can be more narrow and your cheekbones won't be that visible. Also, if you're a mouth breather, you'd probably tend to tilt your head backwards more. This way, you increase cranial contents in the back part of your brain and directly change your entire posture, along with the shape of your neck and face. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So hey, chill. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Humans don't have such big teeth as a tiger shark, or so many of them. But research says, even though sharks have teeth coated with really tough enamel, they're not stronger than ours. We have proteins that glue our teeth together to stop the entire tooth from cracking. We don't lose them, unlike sharks. Their teeth aren't attached to their gums on a root like ours. So, they approximately lose one tooth every week. Ever wondered why you have toenails? Nails are made of keratin. That's a protein you can find in fur, claws, hooves, and hair. Unlike claws, our nails are flat and wide. They shield the tips of our toes and fingers from injuries. Also, thanks to fingernails, we have a rigid backing that helps us grab and separate different objects. It would be hard to peel a sticker from the backing or pick up a jigsaw piece without nails. Apes and monkeys use their feet for similar delicate tasks as well. Scientists think that primates evolved nails to tightly grasp branches, remove ticks, and do other similar things. The human body glows in the dark, which means we're faintly bioluminescent. But that light is 1,000 times weaker than our eyes can see. Other animals will easily spot our faint light though. Your eyes are pretty sensitive. You almost never get the chance to see how sensitive your eyes are because of all the light constantly surrounding you. Human cells are only 43% of the total cell count in your body, and the rest are microscopic colonists. That means you're mostly made up of bacteria and fungi. So basically, you're the mix of the DNA of gut microbes and your own DNA. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously. For example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually when animals mimic others, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or yawns. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch, and your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're sleeping, but don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. In an adult, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper, the passage splits into the esophagus and trachea. There's a name for the growling sound your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called barbarigmy. About 1/3 of all people can raise one eyebrow, left or right. It's a great way to send a playful signal to someone while telling a joke. But the ability to raise both eyebrows separately is much rarer. If you're not among them, that's because you cannot yet control and move the corresponding muscles. But this skill can be developed. Stand in front of a mirror. Hold one eyebrow with your hand and lift the other up and down, and then do the same with the other eyebrow. This will help you learn moving them separately. If you can lick your elbow easily or touch your thumb to your forearm, congratulations! You're among the minority of people, but some people bring flexibility to the next level. This condition is called hypermobility. It allows rare individuals to twist their bodies into weird positions just like a snake, putting their head between their feet, doing a back bridge, and all sorts of splits. But in some cases, hypermobility can increase sensitivity because such people have a larger medulla. This brain area is responsible for processing emotions. These fearless heroes can walk in the cold wearing only swimming trunks and feel cozy. They can stand in the snow barefoot and even swim in a river or an ice hole. Usually, this talent doesn't come naturally. People temper their bodies for years until they get used to withstanding extreme cold. Of course, they don't do it just to look cool or feel cool. Do you feel ticklish when you tickle yourself? Normally you wouldn't, unless someone else tickles you. It happens because of the cerebellum area of the brain, which monitors movements, predicts the sensations caused by your own movements. Then, it sends a signal to other parts of the nervous system to cancel these sensations. But some rare individuals can actually feel ticklish on their own. If you're not among them, touching a new texture that the brain doesn't yet recognize, or using a scalp massager, can help to excite your nerves and bring relaxation. Stand in front of a mirror. Open your mouth and try to roll the sides of your tongue up towards each other to make a U shape. About 65 to 81% of people are natural tongue rollers, and the majority are women. Some believed it's a genetic capability, but recent studies showed that people can actually develop this skill by practicing. Kachari Mudra is a term from yoga that means curling the tip of your tongue back into the mouth. Can you wiggle your ears intentionally? Congratulations! Around 22% of people on the earth are capable of wiggling one ear. As for moving both ears at once, only 18% can do that. Ear wiggling used to be a common thing for our distant ancestors. Scientists believe they could perform a variety of movements with their ears. The group of muscles responsible for wiggling is called the auriculars, and we mostly don't need them today. But some people claim that everyone can learn to move their ears. It only takes time and practice. Unfortunately, we still can't acquire this classy habit of twitching an ear towards a sound source as dogs and cats do.
Now, I've tried this one myself too. Pinch your elbow as hard as you can. You barely feel pain. How come? Well, different areas of your skin have different nerve endings. Our bodies are designed to be more sensitive to pain in places that are at higher risk of getting damaged. Those important parts have more nerve endings so that we're more alert and able to protect ourselves. And thick skin, like that on elbows, has fewer pain detectors. Now, I'm not talking about the tingling, jolting pain you can feel when you hit your elbow against something. Oh, that feels almost like your entire arm has been electrocuted. It's not a feeling I would consider funny, but it comes from the funny bone. Now, the funny bone isn't actually a bone. It's a nerve that starts in your spine, goes through your neck, through your elbow, and through your fingers. Its real name is the ulnar nerve. It's one of the 3 primary nerves in your arm, and it provides sensation to the fingertips. Your ulnar nerve is well protected by muscle, fat, and bone. But there's one spot at your elbow where this nerve is exposed, and that spot is, the funny bone. A different but real version of Achilles' story, huh? Okay, so now you know why it hits so different when you bump your funny bone and why you feel nothing when you pinch your elbow. Now, the next phenomenon is related to socially awkward moments. Okay, maybe not entirely. It might happen when your crush gives you a compliment. I'm talking about blushing. Now, I'm not sure those butterflies in your stomach exist when you're in love. But I'm sure of this, when you blush, your stomach lining also turns red. Yeah, I've looked. The stomach lining is the tissue that protects your stomach walls from the acid inside. When you blush, it also turns red because blushing happens when the blood rises to the surface of the skin. This affects the stomach too. Now, this is a natural process, a physiological response to the change in your emotions. Now, since we're talking about the stomach, it might be a good time to mention that the stomach fluid has the ability to melt a steel table. Yup. This means the acid would be able to digest your internal organs. Luckily, the stomach lining prevents this from happening. Number 3 is about letting you know that you can glow in the dark. Now, don't turn off the lights just yet. You can't see it with the unaided eye. These visuals of glittering human bodies come from ultra-sensitive cameras. Japanese scientists were the first to capture the images of human bioluminescence. Only ultra-sensitive cameras can reveal that our bodies emit tiny amounts of light, because this light is 1,000 times weaker than the human eye can detect. Apparently, all living creatures produce a small amount of light thanks to the chemical reactions in their cells. Humans are newly added to this list. The researchers had been photographing the upper bodies of the volunteers for several days. The results showed that the amount of emitted light followed a 24-hour cycle. The glow is at its highest in late afternoon and lowest late at night. Plus, the brightest light is emitted from the cheeks, forehead, and neck. Interestingly, this does not correspond with the brightest areas caught by thermal cameras. Did you know you're a little bit taller in the morning than you are later at night? Yes, I've been measuring you. Seriously, this height difference is related to gravity. Its force compresses the cartilage in your spine and knees when you stand up or sit down throughout the day. But when you're lying down, your spine decompresses and relaxes. That's why when you wake up in the morning after resting in bed all night, you're taller. The increase in height is not even above an inch, so don't bet on who is taller after hearing this information. Fun fact, Astronauts returning from a mission are a few inches taller than they usually are on Earth. It's because of the lack of gravity on the International Space Station. They don't remain that tall forever, though. When they're on the Earth again, gravity gradually squeezes them back down to their usual height. Now, let's get back to the organ we've already spoken about, the skin. Yes, the skin is an organ. In fact, it's the largest organ in your body. It contributes to about 15% of your body weight. What else does this organ do, besides covering your body? It performs vital functions. For instance, it protects your body from external physical and biological harm. Plus, it prevents excessive water loss. Now, I can't help wondering what other surprises the human body has in store for us. But right now, let's move on to the animal planet. Owls don't have eyeballs. Instead, they have something called eye tubes. Their rod-shaped eyes do not move in their sockets as our eyeballs do. That's why owls would have to move their entire bodies to look around. But moving their torsos would make some noise, and other animals would hear it. So owls have evolved to have necks that can twist to around 270 degrees, and they move super silently. But why the concern? Well, night vision requires large corneas to get as much light as possible. This is the main reason why most nocturnal animals, such as the slow loris or tarsier, have big eyes. For owls, it works a little differently. Since they have small heads, such large eyes wouldn't be able to fit inside. Now, even though these creatures don't have eyeballs, they have 3 sets of eyelids. One set is for blinking, one is for sleeping, and the last one is for keeping their eye tubes clean. So, do the owls give a hoot about that? Yes, they do. Moving on from nocturnal animals to the ones you're more familiar with. Meow. Cats have an extra organ that allows them to taste scents in the air. This organ is called Jacobson's organ, or the vomeral nasal organ. Jacobson's organ is located inside the cat's nasal cavity and opens into the roof of the mouth. This organ can detect specific chemicals by using nerves that lead directly to the brain. That's not a regular sniffing, though. The odor receptors of Jacobson's organ aren't designed to catch ordinary smells. They detect chemicals that have no odor at all. In other words, cats can detect undetectable smells. It's not just this. Jacobson's organ increases the sense of smell. For instance, when kittens need to find their mother's milk, imagine there are 2 mother cats and 4 kittens. Kittens can distinguish their mother from the other grown-up cat with the help of their sense of smell. Now, when 2 people meet, they assess each other's body language. Cats can usually do this by sniffing each other's heads. This greeting releases pheromones that can tell a lot about one cat to the other, like what the other feline likes to eat or if they are healthy or not. They can even evaluate whether the other cat is happy or moody, all thanks to Jacobson's organ. Now, another fact about cats. Their nose has distinct ridges that look like a pattern. Similar to our fingerprints, every cat has a unique nose print. It can be used as a form of identification. Okay, cat, we can nail you for breaking the vase. We have your nose prints all over it. Now, do you want to cut a deal? Just tell us what you know about the dog and that chewed-up DVD. Dog lovers? No, I didn't forget about you. Here's a myth you've probably heard. Dogs are colorblind. But they aren't. However, it is true that the color range they can detect is limited compared to the spectrum humans can see. Their color palette consists mostly of yellows, blues, and violets. Our reds, greens, and oranges are not noticeable to them. Now this one is about turtles. These animals cannot leave their shells and get back whenever they want. In fact, they are completely attached to their shells. These shells grow with turtles, similar to the human skin. A turtle's shell consists of 50 bones. It also includes a skeleton with the spine and rib cage. So, they go on vacation with it. It's kind of like an RV that you can't get rid of. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like